Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. It's a pleasure having y'all here. I just want to go ahead and introduce y'all. We're here today with Nicole Galacci from Food Grads. Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
Paula West from iCareers.com.
Hello.
And Clara Bowles from iCareers.com.
Hello.
So today we wanted to hear your opinion on how the learning changes after completing a formal education and your experiences on that. And I'm very excited to hear your answers. And I can just go ahead and jump into the questions. So first question, how important do you think continuous learning is after completing a formal education, and what does it look like to you? You can give some examples too. Nicole, you can start if you want.
Sure. Well, my formal education was like 1,000 years ago. So I would say that continuous education is 100% something you need to focus on in order to progress in your career. Things change so fast. I got my BA in social studies a long time ago, and I think I've learned more since, let's just put it that way, being in the work environment and then how your job changes. You have to keep learning, you have to keep an open mind, anything that's offered to you in terms of, continuous development at work. But if there's something you can pursue outside that interests you, and certainly if you've figured out, what you want to do for your career and you have a plan, you should seek out those opportunities to continually, educate yourself. I haven't myself done any formal education since I graduated, but I read a ton. I'm always reading a book. I have sort of two on my nightstand. One is always like something fun, and then the other is always something that I can learn from and bring into my work environment. So yeah, I can keep talking, but maybe I should let someone else.
Paula, what do you think?
Well, I feel the same as Nicole. I have been out of my preliminary round of schooling for a long time, but I have gone back as an adult several times to obtain different certificates and programs to kind of keep myself current and learn some new skills. And I think that's really important. We can get stagnant kind of in our careers and in our positions. And I mean, the world outside and around us changes. And if we don't adapt and change and stay current, we kind of lose I don't want to say we lose our value, but we lose our, I don't know, like the awareness of what's going on and our desire and our willingness to try new things for sure. But I want to hear from Clara for sure on this one, because Clara is probably the closest to her graduation date. She's already graduated, but tell us, Clara, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Paula and Nicole. I think we have so much potential, and to be able to seek the potential, you have to keep learning. But I think that sounds intimidating, especially after you've just completed. I completed 4 years. Most of us complete 4 to maybe 6 years of education. You're like, well, I just learned all of this. I have to keep learning. But if you just have your mindset so open all the time, it doesn't always feel like you're learning. Like you're not in a lecture hall, you're not taking notes, you're learning how to actually do your job. So I think just having the mindset of you're always learning, and to be prepared for that and to learn what you're actually going to do to make yourself successful is a lot more attractive than oh my gosh, I have to keep learning. That's what I've been doing for the past, I don't know, 15 years, So I think your mindset has a lot to do with it. And I think you don't have to have it in this bucket that's always formal education. You don't always have to go back. You could, like Paula, she's gone back and she's very successful. But you don't always have to. It doesn't always have to look like a certificate or another degree or something super structured.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. And my next question would be, how can someone overcome the challenges of finding the time for learning outside of their regular commitments? you guys are busy. What are your tips? And maybe, yeah.
I agree. I mean, once you you know, you're in a role, you're busy, and you know, maybe you start a family, and then your priorities change too. There's a saying, you know, you can't have everything. And I think you can. I think you can't have it all at once. That's been my experience anyway. So my career early on, I chose roles that meant that I could dedicate more time to having a young family, not feeling guilty that I was spending, you know, more time at the school trips and all this stuff. You know, balancing that. And then, you know, it evolves, like life happens, and you can sort of choose roles and responsibilities that increase so that when you have the time to do that. So it's really challenging, I think, to find the time outside of work, because we only have so many hours in a day. But to Clara's point as well, it doesn't have to be formal training. It can be a book, it can be a podcast while you're driving in the car. You know, it doesn't have to be formal. So you can find the time. It's about intention. You know, if you want to find the time, you can find it, I think.
It's true. There's so many resources out there that you can snip into your life in time that you think is already allocated to something else. And podcasts and audiobooks are great examples of using those commute times that you have. I know for myself, I had to get into a shift of mindset for me as a parent, that I needed to visually be a part of all of their practices. And I treated in my mind practice time for my children's sport the same as game time. And once I was able to kind of free up that time, so I was physically present on a sideline, but I was able to read during that time, during their practice time, and then of course dedicate, you know, family time to those games, I was finding myself with a few extra hours. I also believe that when the educational piece is very important to you and you've decided to make that commitment, you need to block that out on your family calendar, your household calendar, whatever that looks like, and treat it as though it's any kind of recreational activity or things that you commit money to, that you block that time out. So if it means from 7 till 8 o'clock at night, you're studying, and everyone in your household sees that on the calendar and knows that that time is your time for that, it helps you, you know, really value the time and remind yourself that you have to have all these buckets of time to get that formal or informal education, however that looks like, completed. And it also makes it very present and puts ownership on the family or the household to also respect that time and know that that is time that is specifically allocated to those. I think it's a good tool for even younger folks and other people that you're living with in your home. That's a soft skill. So at the same time, when you're breaking out that time on your calendar for you to learn perhaps formal education, it is also teaching them, you know, the soft skill of being respectful of other people's time, and that everybody has, you know, responsibilities, and during that time slot, they have to be responsible for their own selves. So it's kind of a give and take kind of time. So
I think it's very, very valuable tip, and it shows the respect to learning, to yourself and your time, and you value yourself and your education, basically. Claire, what do you think?
Yeah, I would go off what Nicole said about the priorities. You really have to see like if it makes sense for you to dive super deep into something after you're maybe just getting into a career, and maybe everybody else is doing some sort of continuous learning. Does not mean that you have to. You're not necessarily falling behind. It's just not your time. And also see if your work will support it. I found a webinar, or I guess it wasn't a webinar, a workshop in person in my town, and our work never said, hey, you can go to this, but all I did was simply ask, and it ended up being really beneficial for not even me, but our whole marketing team. So I think there's power behind just asking and seeing, you know, it's growing you as an individual, but your business as a whole is growing. So I think asking and just always having the goal in mind. Like if the goal is super important, you'll make time for it.
I
Wow,
think
that's
that's
great.
valuable. Yeah, I think when I was answering the question too, I totally was thinking outside of like office time and work time and whether or not your company was supportive or not to that time, right? If your company is supportive and allocates, hey, monies and time to allow you to take those opportunities, then I think it's
Go
super
for it.
important people do.
And to piggyback off that, I think right now with the labor market, the challenges that they're facing, companies are focusing on retention and career development. They realize they have to invest back into their employees to keep them. And so I think if you are in an organization and you put your hand up and say, I want to learn, I want to do more, right now is a really good time to do that because they, and you also make yourself stand out, amongst your team as someone that that does want to learn and develop. So HR's watching, leaders are watching. If you're the one saying, I want to learn this and I want to learn that, then you that's going to result in promotions and your own career advancement. So yeah, great point, Clara.
These are great tips. Thank you, guys. So my next question is, has learning outside of school helped you overcome the challenges in the workplace? And are there any areas of knowledge you believe that are essential for people to focus on when learning outside of school?
For me, it's leadership skills, and I feel that leadership skills are skills that training shouldn't just be focused on those who are at the top of the organizational chart, the leaders of the company. I believe leadership skills are things that everybody should be taking, those especially that are just starting into their careers. It not only builds confidence and experience and whatnot for those younger folks that are coming into their careers, but it also helps you build your succession plan moving forward as you put time and energy into coworkers and younger employees or less experienced employees and give them confidence and the tools to become, leaders. You don't have to go in 5 or 10 years, oh, who on my team am I going to be able to replace so-and-so who's retiring after 30 years or 20 years? Because you've already been investing in these other folks. And those folks will still be there for you because you've invested in them so early and providing them and showing that you believe that they can be a great leader. So for me, I think leadership at all levels, I think when those that are running your organization need that type of training, of course they have to have it. But I also believe strongly in providing that type of training, early, regardless where you sit on the organizational chart. So you can easily move people around.
Yes, I agree. Nicole, what do you think?
So I think learning outside of school is, as I said earlier, I think it's probably been what I've learned outside of school has probably been my biggest teacher, and I think life experience helps you with that. My biggest takeaway probably would be to share empathy. I think as things happen in life, as a leader in an organization now, it allows you to, I think, be a better leader and relate to people in a better way. We all have different life experiences. We all bring different things to the table, different problems to the table on any given day. And so, to just put yourself out there and learn outside of school, I think just makes you a more well-rounded human, and that will always make you a better teammate or boss, leader, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's what I would add there.
What do you think, Clara?
Yeah, I think Paula and Nicole, I piggyback off what they're saying, the soft skills, you don't ever really learn that in a classroom. Maybe you're working on like a team project or something like that. But when you're working with coworkers day in and day out, you really start to get to know them and how they work. So I think that's something. And then one thing in particular that has been pretty eye-opening to me coming from college, formal education to a job, and I wouldn't even say I learned this in an internship, is working with different generations and having the older generation not be your boss. So when you're an intern, your boss is usually always older than you. So I think that's one thing I've really learned, and it's not necessarily been a challenge, but it's just a really new experience, is working alongside people who are from a different generation than you and they aren't your boss. So it takes the empathy and the leadership to be able to work together and not really see the age. Obviously, some have more experience than others, and that works out great. Some have new perspective than others, and that works out great. But that's one thing that I've really noticed and learned that I never learned formally in school.
If you have, do you have a like maybe personal experience where this learning made a significant difference in your life or your career? Any of you?
Well, for me,
Go, Paula.
with my certificate programs, I mean, it opened new doors for sure, because one of them was project management, and that's something that is kind of a niche and something different, that you can't just kind of soft skill learn. You can be very, very organized, but then there's a lot of other things and tools that, you know, a designated project management type of role requires. So for me, that opened a lot of new doors on my career path. It also allowed me to kind of learn some new tools about risk management and sit back and kind of like how I handle those, or how they could be handled or identified. And sometimes I'm maybe going to sound super lame, but I find myself doing that a little bit in my own personal world, sitting back more and being like, okay, what's going to happen if? What's going to happen if? What are we going to do when? Kind of like, and just kind of like, what's going to happen if I have a problem in, you know, the next 5, 10, 3 hours to solve that, if I get different answers, kind of like an info tree or something like that where you're following along. So for me, those have made huge impacts. It also allowed me to shift more and build a stronger career in marketing than I thought that I would when I started my career out there in the world fresh from school. So definitely for myself.
Nicole, do you have any
Well,
personal experience?
I mean, it's fun. I think your career finds you. I think the continual learning has taken me on this path of recruitment, and then stepping out of that a little bit to start food grads and support young people, because I feel like maybe at that point in my life I was able to offer something. Maybe it's an age thing where you get to a point where you think I actually do have some stuff I could share with the next generation and help them. And I wish I had that a little bit more when I was starting out. And so and it's not like I know everything, but bringing people together, bringing a community together that can help, support in a career. So yeah, I mean, I think just learning outside for me has developed my career. If someone had told me, I don't know, even 5 years ago that I'd be in a leadership position managing people, and I would say, God, no, I'm not a manager. Like, I'm not a natural manager, and I still don't think I actually am, but I do think that I have the confidence now to believe that I have something to bring to the table and bring value, and that all comes with age and experience. So, you don't necessarily, you can have all the qualifications under your belt, but you unless you have that confidence and that self, I guess, value that something in your industry, and I think that comes from learning outside of school. I don't think you can get that necessarily from school. Again, it depends if what your career path is. I'm hoping a doctor would feel pretty confident in their abilities when they graduate, but I think it does take time and learning to really fulfill your potential, as Clara said at the beginning. So yeah, I think that answers the question. Sometimes I go off and it's like, what was the question again?
Yeah.
It did.
I think I'll go with what Nicole said on learning. I think every day we're learning something, and I think every little bit just gives us that little bit of confidence we need. And coming from a smaller company, we're all kind of like specialists in our role. So when you can have that education, even if it's not formal, it can be just having a mentor that taught you something that you really grasped. Having that gives you the confidence to like know that you're doing your job right. I think also coming into a company that isn't super big. You learn what kind of transferable skills you have. And so I might be the marketing coordinator for a company, but I can still support our sales team. And I can still communicate that to Paula when we need help on the web. So I think just learning things about yourself, and then you're like, hey, I really enjoy this. I would love to support the business on this side of things. So I think just learning who you kind of are as a person and what types of things you are passionate about and what you enjoy really helps out.
Mhm.
I think that's a really important point as well, Clara, because when you continuously learn and offer your assistance and are open to all the things, you don't pigeonhole yourself so much in your career as well. People know and realize that you're a team player and somebody that, yeah, can work on this project over here, work on that project over here. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in your department or on your job list of tasks to do, but you're happy to do it. And those are just bonus marks. Like those are just check, check, check. That's a great employee. That's a great coworker. That's somebody I want to work with. That's somebody who I can come to and ask questions. And it makes you super valuable in ways that a piece of paper can't.
Right. I agree.
100%.
I have just small questions. These are not very big. So first one is, what role does self-motivation play in the pursuit of lifelong learning? We kind of went over these questions, but I still want to hear your specific answers. So any of you?
I can jump in. Motivation is a difficult one. I think that anyone that says they wake up every single morning fully like charged, ready to go, is not being maybe truthful, or I would just say that you're always going to have days where you're not feeling motivated, but it's how you gather yourself, how you look at your week. Maybe you say to yourself, today I need to just step away. I need to maybe read some pages of that book that lifts you and gives you some motivation, and then I can come back to my work day. I know a manager I used to have in sales said, if you're really not feeling it, take the day off. Come back tomorrow fully charged, because you're not doing anything valuable today if you don't feel like. In fact, you could do more harm if you're on the phone, on the phones and you're selling, for example, and you're not, bringing your A game. And so I definitely think it's about knowing who you are, getting to know yourself, knowing that there are going to be days where it's a struggle. But don't beat yourself up. You get to it. There's always tomorrow. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned. It's like you've got so much on your desk, and that's when you get burnout and stress and all those types of things come into play. So you really need to manage that and balance that, and know there's. I had a boss that used to say, we don't save lives for a living. It's okay to take a minute, it's there tomorrow, and we'll do our best, and we keep charging forward. So I think for our own mental health, you need to take those times, and take your well-being is more important, and then you'll be around for the long haul, versus burning out and just throwing everything into your job and every day, and then you're looking at yourself and not feeling your best. So you got to take care of yourself.
I think self-motivation is super important for not only the times when your company may say to you, I want you to take this, course, here's a book I want you to read, to like block that time out and really find the value in that can also require some self-motivation. But also when your company does not offer those opportunities and you have to find the time and make that a priority, it can be hard to self-motivate. And it's always easier to make commitments when you make a commitment to someone else. So perhaps it's finding another coworker to kind of enroll or read a book, right? Like we're both going to read this chapter this week, and then we'll have a discussion, even if you have to carve it out over your lunch hours or something, and you get together to do that. If you strongly believe that it's something that's going to benefit your career, benefit you personally. I mean, if you're going to take the time out of your 24 hours to dedicate time to it, I mean, it first, great, find the time. And that's hard to do. And that's where the self-motivation is. But then to do it at a level that you actually also aren't just checking a box, that's done. I read it, right? You need to be motivated to like absorb the material or absorb the lesson and then put the material and the lesson and things into motion, actually use them. That's the secondary step that I think that people often are nervous to do or scared to do or forget to do, or they don't have the motivation to take. I've learned all these tools, but I'm not going to say anything, or I'm not going to use them, or I'm not going to share this great book that I read with Clara because, oh, what if she thinks that I'm pushing something on her? Or what if she thinks that I don't think she's doing a great job, right? Like there's all those things that can demotivate people or scare people away from doing those things. And I think sometimes you just really have to dig deep or have a conversation with that person and say, hey, I'm having trouble staying motivated or, you know, carving out the time, and do you want to do this with me? And it has nothing to do with you and how I view you as a coworker. It has everything to do with me. And because I trust you and think you're a great coworker, I value and trust you with this piece of information of my, you know, perhaps non-confidence in myself to get this done. So, I mean, self-motivation is a big piece of it, but you're not alone, and we are human, like Nicole was saying. So finding a buddy to kind of go through those things with you and hold you accountable if you can't can really, really help.
Yes.
I very much agree with Paula. She took what I was going to say. But doing it with somebody, Paula's probably going to agree to this. Like if somebody knows I'm doing something, I'm going to get it done on time just because I'm so scared what they're going to think of me if I don't get the task done on time. So if I was doing something with Paula, we would be getting it done because we'd hold each other accountable. So I think that would be my advice, is to do it with somebody. And then I think it doesn't always have to take motivation. I think if you're like looking at the big picture and you're really wanting to build yourself in your toolbox, you don't have to think of it as that big course. My manager Bonnie will send back edits a lot on articles, and just by reading through her edits, which is part of my job, I'm learning something every single time. So I think by just like, oh, okay, well, maybe I didn't read a book today about how to be a better marketer, but I read through Bonnie's edits, which was part of my job. I did learn something. So I think just giving yourself that little bit of slack is okay sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Also, and there was some training that we did recently ourselves within the organization, and I think identifying if it's something that keeps reoccurring that really demotivates you and it's part of your job, maybe like Paula said, bring that up to someone, because there could be someone else in the organization that just loves that, and that's part of being on a team. So it kind of is repeating what you already said, but there's a team around you, and you know, why struggle? And it, you know, if it's really puts you in a low place to know, oh, I got that to do, and you keep putting it off, and then it's like that monkey on your back. Bring it up to your manager, because you never know that, like I say, someone else in the organization, that could be their what they get up for in the morning. They love that, they get that done first, you know. So yeah.
Good point.
My next question is, how can learning from real world experiences and challenges complement formal education? So maybe after you work these many years and you want to go back and do your master's or a PhD, how does that complement, you think?
You want me to go ahead? I would just say, with regards to going back to school, it really does depend on what your career plan is. You know, not every single company or role requires you to go back and get formal education, but some do. And then maybe it's a personal thing. You went to college. I would say college here in Canada, and you wish you'd gone to university, or the same in the UK. That's the same system there, and you wish you'd gone on further to get that degree. And if it's something that you, in your own personal your personal goals, it's something that's in there, then you know, do it, but have a plan. You know, like we have lots of conversations around people that go and get PhDs, and then they'll often find their overqualified for lots of jobs. So I would just say do your homework, make sure you have a plan if you're doing your PhD, because that's something that you want to do and you're fully aware that it's not going to offer X amount more in salary per se, but it's something you wanted to do. But maybe you're so aware of that you've been working whilst you're getting your PhD. So you are hireable, because you want to make sure there's that balance of actual hands-on relevant work experience at the same time as education. And I would never advise anyone just to stay in education as long as they can, because I think they will find, and having worked with a lot of students specifically in the food industry, they will find that they're going to find it tough to get hired, because companies are looking for people with relevant hands-on work experience. So I think keep that in mind. And it's so individual. It really does depend on what your career goals are. But there's always, like, everyone's path is different, you know. I think there's no one size fits all. That's the biggest takeaway. I tell students all the time, and I think Clara mentioned it earlier, what your time, it might not be your time for something. So don't beat yourself up. Have a plan, but know that maybe your friends are direct, you know, they're getting all these wonderful titles and salary, and maybe you're not quite there yet, but maybe that's not for you for another 5 years, because you're focusing on something else, and that's okay. So I think that's the biggest thing to take away, is we all have our own plan.
I think too, your real world experiences help you solve and answer problems and interact with other people as a human would interact with another human, right? Like, you're able to take that moment and reference another piece of or point in time and be like, oh my goodness, this has happened to me before, or I've witnessed this happen before, or you're able to take those experiences and kind of manufacture a better way to process and get yourself through those times that you're in right now. It's how we all grow up. It's how we've learned how to go from being a toddler to a child in school, to a high schooler, to a post-secondary school, to an adult, to, you know, running companies. It's all through the process of trial and error and learning and being human. And that's not always book work, right? That's definitely your experiences, and marrying the two of those together, the formal education and the processes and how you know that the rules are in the book look and the logic, but also knowing in reality how those things work and how people react, and, you know, emotion into all of that. You know, you can't replace that with, you know, 3 years of college versus 3 years of schooling, or vice versa. You have to eventually have both to really be, you know, I think, a great employee. You can come in with 1 year of schooling and 1 year experience, or 0 schooling and 0 experience, and still be a great human. You're just going to keep becoming a greater human. So.
Yeah, I agree to what Paula and Nicole said. I think just keeping it super realistic, and I know there's like that fear of missing out or that fear of falling behind. And I think when your friends are doing it, maybe your friends are taking these courses and you're like, wait, am I supposed to be doing that too? That's hard. So I think just keeping what's really important to you and what's important to your company and what your managers think of you is very important. And I think some people might disagree. It's okay to be comfortable. Like I said, you're still going to be learning like your day-to-day tasks, and you're always going to be taking on new things. And, you know, the past 2 years I've helped manage an intern. That's a whole new experience. I didn't go take a class on it. I just learned how to do it every day from people who like Paula and Nicole and Bonnie, who were doing it before I was. So I think just taking in what's going on around you is a learning experience, and just being okay to just be comfortable for a little bit, not all the time. That's not great advice, but it's okay to be comfortable and to get really good at what you're doing. That's learning too.
I think that's a great piece of advice. There was a moment in my career where I felt the pressure from management that I should be striving for more, and financially it worked for me. the hours I was putting in, it was just working exactly to your point, and I didn't want more, but there was a pressure, you know, to want more, and I didn't. And so there I think that's really important, to make it clear that, you know, sometimes, you know, there is a time for everything. And at that point in my career, to balance everything as I was with kids and work for me. And I think it does take a lot to stay strong, because you can find yourself drowning and tipping, and you know, so you take that promotion and then your kids never see you, and then you've got all that guilt, you know. So, you know, it is that balance. So that, I think that's a great point, to just be true to you and what works for you. Sorry, Paula, I think you were going to say something too.
I 100% agree. I was pushed once by manager to take a promotional type of role and, you know, make more money and but was a whole different job function. And it was just something in my core. I knew I didn't want that job function. I wasn't inside me that employee. I didn't want it at all. And so I ended up walking away from the company because the pressure to push forward was so hard. And I'm glad I did, because I wouldn't have been happy. I would have been miserable. I would have been perhaps making a lot of money, because I was in a financial world. And if anybody knows me, I don't like all of that part of, you know, investing and trying to sell people things that they don't need, and, you know, things that like the backside of all of that type of stuff. It just isn't me. I want to help people. I want people to grow in their careers. I want their experiences to be great. I want them to be able to come to me and know that I'm being honest with them, and that my intention for them is always the best and the pure. I don't want to be known as like somebody who's advising you to benefit me. That's in my core, just didn't line up with my ethics. And I think it's important for people to know that just because there is educational opportunities or promotional opportunities, internal opportunities, you know, that look great on paper, but inside your body, inside yourself, if you know that that's not for you, you're just going to do detriment to yourself and to your career potentially, because you leave from being a happy, productive, great coworker to have around or employee to somebody who is the complete opposite of that. And, you know, when that's not naturally who you are, it will eat you away and make you wish that you were not coming to work every day.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't lead to good. That's not good for employers, because you're not retaining you, you know, you're not working effectively or efficiently. You're not a team player. Like it's just awful for everybody. So
Mhm.
you know that you don't have to take everything that comes to you.
Mhm. These are truly great advices, and I just want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you for everything. Thank you for your experience, sharing your experiences. These are all my questions for today, and I truly believe that these will help young professionals throughout their careers. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
Karen.
Bye.